At my son's wedding, the sticker they handed me didn't say my name. It said Afterthought. I felt the cut, but a lifetime of single motherhood taught me to breathe, square my shoulders, and let dignity do the talking. So I slid that label into my clutch, gathered quiet proof, and made one phone call that would let systems, not a scene, decide what mattered. By morning, a red elevator light and a thin balance sheet told the truth for me, and that was only the beginning. Before I continue the story, please subscribe to the channel and leave a comment letting me know where you're watching from. The Marigold Grand smelled faintly of lemon polish and lilies, a spring shine, over limestone floors. I arrived 10 minutes early the way nurses do even after retirement. Chandelier prisms sprinkled light along the lobby, and I tucked my phone to silent. My clutch held a slim card with my son's name and a small promise I'd made to myself: be on time, be gracious, be mother. I checked the valet ticket. Loop traffic had been kind and smoothed the sleeve of the dress I'd hemmed last week. The hour read 5:05. I breathed like I was entering a patient's room, steady, present, careful with hope. A young associate in black crepe lifted a tablet and asked for my QR. I held it steady. The screen blinked, then settled on a tidy blue bar that read, Vendor Chiu Catering. Her smile was professional. Her eyes already moved past me toward a cluster of sequins. Enjoy the evening, she said, sliding a paper wristband toward my fingers as if this were a festival, not my son's wedding. May I have a printed exception? With the timestamp, I asked, keeping my voice cordial. She hesitated, scanning the tablet again, then fed a slip through the little thermal printer. Heat curled one edge as the numbers printed, May 17th, 5:08 p.m. I read it twice and tucked it behind my insurance card. The associate pointed me toward a set of elevators. No apology, only motion. I thanked her anyway. The nurse in me knows how many mistakes are made on busy afternoons, how a name can land in the wrong column when someone is rushing. Still, the words sat there on the screen like a thumb pressed to my chest. Vendor. I have iced foreheads and held hands through long nights, but I have never delivered canapes. I stepped aside to clear the line and looked up at the ceiling, counting prisms, the way you count to 10 with a child letting the first sting pass without showing it. What mattered, I told myself, was Jasper's face when he turned and saw me later. What mattered was not teaching the lobby to watch me hurt. So I folded the slip in two, then once more, and let the proof rest like a small square spine in my clutch. A server floated past with a tray of champagne. He offered left, then right, and turned before my hand reached the stem. Another tray followed. Again, the arc of his arm skipped my square of floor. A bridesmaid in blush chiffon skimmed by, pinning in an earring as she walked. "Do you know where the florals are staged?" she whispered. I nodded toward a door marked, Service Only, because of course I had noticed the vases there, humbly hidden behind a rolling cart. The glassware rattled over a seam in the tile. I stepped back. One flute after another sailed toward laughter I could not quite see. None of it was a scene. Each moment was a paper cut, more sting than blood. I made myself small for traffic, then straightened again. An usher checked a list on a clipboard and led me through the ballroom. Table 19, he said softly, like a secret he didn't want to carry. We passed center tables dressed in tall white tulips and deftly folded napkins. Toward the back, the lighting cooled. There it was against the wall beside the swinging restroom doors and the coat check. One chair wobbled as if uncertain of its own welcome. I pressed a hand to the table and tested the legs. The short one confessed itself with a quick clack. I folded the extra program into a neat square and slid it under the weak foot. The restroom hinge sang. Air dryers roared, then hushed. From the front, laughter rose and fell over glass towers. I could see my son at the head table, his profile caught in an amber wash. He threw his head back at something the best man said. To his left, the bride's side posed in a sweep of satin phones, lifted shoulders touching. I waited for that small instinctive scan across the room people make for those who raise them. It didn't come. A guest slipped into the seat beside me, glanced at the restroom sign, and offered a quick, pitying smile. The usher returned with place cards and positioned one at each setting. Mine showed Aileen, last name correct, centered, and crisp. The typeface was elegant. The placement was not. I traced the ink with my thumb as if pressure could coax the card forward. I have learned that humiliation prefers an audience. I refused to provide it. I lifted my water, took a small sip, and studied the room, the way I used to study monitors, noting patterns and saving strength for when it mattered. I slid my hand into the clutch and touched the warm paper curl. The timestamp steadied me. Facts are small rails you can hold when the room tilts. Across the lobby, the embossed seating board listed names in quiet rows. Mine would be there somewhere, though not near the front. I pictured it the way a nurse pictures a chart line by line, calm, exact. Tonight I would not audition for sympathy. I would remember. I closed the clasp and felt the snap carry through my palm like a vow. When the music shifted, I stood and walked back toward the lobby. The associate was peeling fresh labels from a glossy sheet for late arrivals. "I'll need my printed name tag," I said. She reached for a blank rectangle, then for the thick black marker resting near her elbow, as if the printer couldn't be trusted. The sticker looked heavier than paper, the kind that clings longer than you intend. Her hand hovered, practiced, and quick. I watched the tip of the marker pause, then lower. The ballroom hummed behind me. I set my clutch on the counter, steady and open, and waited to see what name the room would try to give me next. The lobby held its breath, and I waited. The badge slid across the counter into my palm. It did not carry my name. It wore a single word in blunt, black, Afterthought. I held it by the corners so the ink wouldn't brush my lace sleeve. I breathed once and let the sticker cool. The peel edge stayed warm, waiting for a chest it would not touch. I kept my voice behind my teeth and read the letters until my hands remembered to be still. Calm. Behind me, a cork leapt, and a ring of laughter rose. 2 guests glanced at the badge in my hand and grinned as if the word were a prank. I turned the sticker over so it read nothing, then set it face down. "May I have the time printed on that I asked, the way one asks for a receipt one intends to keep?" The associate nodded, tapped and fed a thin strip into a tray. I thanked her, folded the paper once, and tucked it into my clutch beside the lipstick I had not used. Across the room, my son stood brilliant and far. Love measures distance one way, evenings another. His tux caught chandelier light. His jaw was his father's. I watched him greet a braid of hugs. The bride posed, the planner floated, the photographer staged smiles. No one turned toward the desk where a woman of 67 held her hands still. I let the evening move around me like a river. A server passed with flutes and didn't offer one. I did not ask. I eased toward the lobby, closer to air. The sticker lay inside the clutch, its word pressed against satin. Quiet, not gone. Indifference is loud if you stand near it. I heard it and chose not to answer it in public. I had come to witness my son's vows not to stage a scene. So I centered my shoulders, lifted my hem with 2 fingers, and returned to the stream of guests as if nothing unusual had happened. That, too, is a choice. Near a column, a guest set down a folded program to check his phone. I lifted it gently the way you handle a stilled bird. Ivory paper serif font, a faint smell of ink. I turned to the page with names. Parents of the groom, it read. Under it, my husband's name followed by a small cross. The year was correct. There was a line below it, a long dash, where another name should have lived. The dash carried little weight to the eye, but in the hand it weighed as much as the mornings I drove a boy to school in snow, as much as the nights I calculated which bill could wait. I traced the dash with 1 fingernail and did not press hard. The paper had not harmed me. It had simply told the truth it was given. On that kitchen tile I mopped for years, a boy once bled a little. I kissed his temple and said we would fix it. The boy in the tux across the room would not feel this cut. That was my work too, absorbing quiet things. I folded the program once clean, so the crease ran through the white space that represented me. I slid it into the clutch beside the timestamp slip and the sticker with its shouting word. Evidence not theater, I reminded myself, and let my shoulders settle back to level. Near a side door, a clipboard rested on a cocktail table, like an altar to order. Shot list family formals, the header read, columns. Bride, plus parents groom, plus father groom, plus siblings. Entire bridal party, checkboxes waited. I scanned twice the way you check a label. There was no line for groom plus mother, no blank to be filled later. I angled my phone, tapped the shutter, the sound barely a whisper. A planner slipped by with tape. I stepped aside, left the clipboard exactly where it had been. One more photo caught the page number and date. The phone slid back into the clutch. The clasp answered. Across the room, the photographer called for the bride's family. People flowed from the bar, belonging. My corner chair would still be waiting, steadied with the folded program that now pressed its crease into my hand with the sticker and the slip. For months I told myself weddings rearrange the living, that new circles take shape and old ones drift, and that the mother who raised the groom must learn to stand a little outside so the new picture can breathe. That is true. This, though, was not air for a new picture. It was absence written in task lines and boxes no one thought to question. Soft. I walked back past table 19, felt the draft from the restroom door, and let it pass through me without consequence. My chair balanced on its paper shim. I touched the clutch sticker program slip photos. Ordinary things forming a shape, I recognized the start of a plan. This room is built for polished applause and tears that photograph well. I have cried those once, not tonight. I thought of my husband's funeral and the calm I borrowed to steady our son. I thought of the years between then and this doorway, groceries, late shifts, a mortgage cut-down month. I know how to wait until the hour favors the truth. So I sat, breathed, and decided I would not argue. I would act elsewhere. Still, the service corridor waited behind a metal door with a push bar polished by use. I walked toward it past a sign reading, "Staff only," a boundary that never scared me. I spent years in back rooms and church kitchens where celebrations are stitched together. At the threshold, the air cooled, carrying detergent and compressors humming. Some spaces keep a quiet that lets decisions take shape. I closed my clutch, turned from the ballroom light, and pressed the metal bar to the service door. The stairwell beyond would be limestone cold, still enough for a single call, made without spectacle. Quietly. The stairwell air was limestone cold when I pushed the staff-only bar. Metal breathed back, compressors hummed in the dark ribcage of the hotel. I counted steps the way I used to count a fever, slow, steady, sure, one hand on the rail, the other anchoring my clutch. Music thudded above like a distant parade I had already stepped out of. The paint on the steps was scuffed to gray. An exit sign bled its small red halo. I set my breath to its pulse and kept descending. And I simply went on. On a crate stenciled with a vineyard, "I don't drink anymore," I set the clutch and opened it. Out slid the small paper bones of the evening, the QR slip that labeled me vendor, catering, the sticker that read, "Afterthought," the program where a tasteful cross dignified the dead father, while my line lay blank, and the photo I had just taken of the shot list that forgot a mother could also be family. I placed them in order, edges squared, as if laying tiles for a backsplash I once measured alone. The phone found 2 bars. It was enough. I typed a list without adjectives, date, time, who, what I was handed, what I was shown. No storms, no pleas, only facts. If the room would not say my name, the record would. I wiped a dust of cork from the screen and read it again, looking for heat. There was none. I added file names and times, checked spellings, and noted where receipts land in my inbox later. I called Marcia because our agreements were written for nights like this when feeling waits in the hall and paperwork walks in. Her hello was warm, efficient. I gave her the facts in a straight line, the venue and time, the entry scan that put me under vendor, catering, the Afterthought sticker, the printed program with a blank for mother, the shot list that forgot a groom could have one, Execute per standing authority, I said. Freeze discretionary disbursements tied to the couple's vendor package. Revoke auxiliary key cards to the Langston penthouse. Flag elevator access for review. Notify building management that any decorator or vendor appointments require owner reauthorization. Send a timestamp notice to the planner confirming suspension pending owner review, and blind copy me. Preserve a clean trail. No commentary. Understood, she said. I heard her keyboard rain on tin. You retain majority control. I'm executing now. Reference TD 4317. Confirm file names. Subject lines include the reference, the venue, tonight's date, I said. Receipts to the trust folder marked Event Wedding mirrored to my archive. Done. I'll place a temporary hold on late-night deliveries to the penthouse standard language. Fine, I said. Fax only. Today, not Monday. I underlined my note, no adjectives. This was not a scene. This was governance. She stayed on the line while confirmations began to land 1, 2 small bells in my pocket. I let them ring without looking. Notices sent, Marcia said. Disbursement rail halted. Building Ciaval anything else? No, I said. That's enough for tonight. I ended the call and stacked the paper until the edges agreed. Steady again. Now. Back up the corridor, a half-open door gave me a sliver of the planner's station. I stood in the shadow of a linen rack and watched the corner of a laptop screen. A soft ping rose above the compressor hum. A banner slid into view. Disbursement halted. Ref TD 4317. Owner review required. The assistant's smile paused. She tapped her headset eyes, flicking to the ballroom. Another ping. She opened an email, then typed fast, mouse trembling. None of it needed my breath to move. System spoke in the grammar we had chosen, dates, references, permissions, gates. Behind her, the planner returned with a clipboard. He read the notification, exhaled through his nose, and nodded once the way a person nods at weather. The assistant pointed. He frowned, then pasted a calm face over the moment and spoke into his mic. Above, a laugh line swelled and broke. Here in the seam of the building, a new line formed, quiet, thin, decisive. I did not step closer. I did not savor. I memorized the banner so I could quote it later without flourish. I watched the cursor pause back away, knowing a door shut. I gathered the pieces back into the clutch in reverse order photo program sticker slip. The click of the clasp sounded like a period. I decided what I would not do: no speech in a room tuned to other people's joy, no text storm, no sudden claims at the head table. What I would do: leave by the loading dock, call a car on the street, and let the night air rinse the sting, so I could think clearly when the sun came up. On the way out, I set 3 reminders. Coffee with the bride. Draft an occupancy proposal listing conditions for the penthouse. Review the guest list against what I know of who shows up when money is near. A fork truck beeped in dark. I waited, let it pass, and stepped into the run, where employees haul the parts of celebration guests don't see. At the dock door, I checked the clock and thought about brass key cards and backlit readers that don't care about weddings. Accounts seem bottomless until a ledger speaks. By morning, the building would do the talking for me. It would say what I had not been allowed to say, not yet, not like this. I lifted the roll-up a foot tasted May and told myself I wasn't leaving the story only changing rooms. The compressors hummed. The music above broke into a cheer. I stepped out and let the door seal. I reached Waverly Point just after 9, with a small tote and a calm plan. River light braided through the glass facade. The lobby piano looped something gentle and brass bells softly slept. I nodded to the concierge, asked for my mail, and said I would review an owner form later. I kept a soft distance from the revolving door and from anyone's eyes. My breath was even. My hands were steady on the clutch, the way steady hands keep families upright. I was here for stewardship, not a scene or speech, so. They arrived on a breeze of morning chatter, my son and his bride, rolling 2 suitcases with the soft rumble of good luggage. He thumbed a slim black key card at the private elevator reader. The LED blinked. A thoughtful amber hesitated, then turned a steady red access. Denied. He tried again. jaw working, half smile fading, red again. Security drifted closer, not hostile, practiced from years of holiday weekends. "Sir, please see concierge for access questions," the officer said, voice, even hands visible. I stood 30 feet away near Ficus, reading the recycling day notice, as if it were scripture. I did not look over. I did not sway. I let the building talk. His bride brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, laughter stalling in her throat. She pressed the button as if the door might change its mind. It didn't. The mirrored doors held our reflections like a stern lake, their bright clothes, my navy jacket, the officer's patient stance. The reader's red held like a stoplight in fog. Nobody argued. I stepped 1 inch to the right so the ficus hid more of me. I read the community board's note about pet wash hours punctuating time with silence. I had pressed this lever last night for reasons recorded and sober. The lever worked now in public without my voice, precisely the point. I thought of a boy in sneakers who once believed all doors opened because his mother waited behind them. Age gives you better levers. It also gives you patience enough to let them do the speaking. I chose a lounge chair away from the desk and opened the Trust app I manage. The household subcard they use for incidentals sat in list like any other tool, only now the numbers were different. Available $55 after automatic holds and the suspension of new disbursements I ordered last night. I took a screenshot for my records. One tap, a polite haptic, then the screen went dark. I was not gloating. I was documenting. I see the instruments I own and control. I do not see their private banking, nor do I need to. The point of governance is that it does not require theater to be real. I named the file image with the date and time the way nurses label vials so no one confuses what matters. I noted the reference number from last night's notice to the planner and matched it to the app entry. Then I locked the phone again and set it face down. Around me, Sunday drifted through the windows now. At the valet kiosk, the bride produced the little black household card and a practiced smile. The handheld chirped thought and printed nothing. On its tiny screen, declined. The valet did not flinch. "Another card, ma'am," he asked, as if asking the weather to change. She looked to my son, quick and tight, private Morse code. He reached into his jacket for his personal card, cheeks glossed with a wedding night's fatigue. The security officer stayed in the middle distance, present, polite. I turned toward the river where a tour boat voice drifted through glass talking about bridges and engineering and time. Inside the elevator doors reflected patience quietly. The valet handed back the black card with the ritual neutrality of people who carry strangers' days. She tucked it into a zip pocket and straightened her hem. I checked the lobby clock. The minute hand moved. So did the world. The concierge lifted her eyes and said my name in a tone meant for libraries. An envelope waited on the counter, warm from the printer, with a typed slip clipped to it. Primary key replaced per owner. Prior keys deactivated. Elevator credentials updated. I initialed the register calm pen strokes on a clean line and accepted the envelope. She can schedule a reauthorization appointment for any future occupants. The concierge offered professional kindness wrapped in policy. I'd like all decorator and vendor appointments to remain canceled pending my written go-ahead, I said. She made a neat note on a form and set it under a small brass weight. My son glanced toward me from the elevator bank suitcase handles, tilted in his hands, something like a question chasing across his face. I did not meet his eyes. The envelope rested against my palm like a decision made yesterday and arriving on time. This is what authority is when you wear it. Quietly paper logs, names written, clearly doors that behave for the person who signs the maintenance checks. Rules observed in daylight require no speeches. They stand upright without anyone raising a voice. The stamp clicked once. Marked. I thanked the concierge, tucked the envelope into my tote, and stepped into the river light. I sent one line to the bride's number, Lakeshore Diner. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. No explanation, no tone to decode. The crosswalk chirped, a cyclist rang a bell, and the smell of fresh roast rode the air from up the block. I walked east with coffee plan and a steady gait. This morning was for paperwork. Tomorrow would be for terms written on a single page and paid in eye contact. The envelope keeps my stride. The bell over the lakeshore diner door had a thin, hopeful ring. I chose a corner booth with a clean view of the chrome clock above the counter and the street where buses sighed at the light. I asked for water and black coffee, nothing else. The waitress set down a thick white mug and a laminated menu I didn't open. I rested my palms on the formica. This was not a fight. I came firm. She arrived with the bell 10 minutes late, a tote that announced itself, sunglasses pushed up like a crown. Darlie slid into the seat across from me without apology. Manicure, perfect makeup, immaculate. Traffic, she said. I nodded once. The waitress returned. She poured more hot coffee. Darlie ordered a latte and kept her phone face down. The waitress, a woman my age with a name tag that read Lupe, topped the coffee without asking and left a small pitcher between us like a referee placing the ball at midfield. I set a small strip of thermal paper between us, the kind hotels print when something small goes wrong. Across the top, in tidy block letters, it read, "Incidentals declined. Provide another card." I offered no commentary. She glanced at it and made a soft, dismissive sound. "That's a system glitch," she said. "We were checking out fast." I sipped coffee and let the slip sit there until the silence finished its job, then slid it back into my clutch. The paper was warm from a lobby printer. A tiny smear of pink from the clerk's highlighter ran through the word, "declined." I asked if she wanted to hold it. She lifted her hand, changed her mind, and rearranged her bracelet instead. "Okay," she said, clasping her hands like a meeting chair. "Let's realign. The penthouse was promised. We have content to produce. The brand is time-sensitive. There are collaborations on the calendar." I folded my napkin, placed it in my lap, and asked the only question that mattered. Promised by whom, I said, and paid by what? The latte arrived. She blinked and recalibrated. "Family," she said finally, obviously. I opened the manila folder by my elbow and slid it across the table so the tabs faced her. "This is the occupancy agreement," I said. 12 months. Market rent set to 0 contingent on service. She laughed one thin breath. I continued calm. 15 hours a week at Safe Harbor Women and Families. Weekly sign-in verified by the administrator. Building stewardship day once a quarter. Common areas, not the view. 2 consecutive weeks missed without prior notice. Trigger automatic revocation. Her nail tapped the line that read, 15 hours week. "This is absurd," she said. "We have shoots, we have schedules. You want me mopping floors with strangers?" I shook my head. "I want you in the neighborhood you say you love," I said. "Hearing stories you don't hear on a set, carry groceries, hold a baby while someone fills out a form, read to a 6-year-old whose mother is choosing between gas and diapers. You can film the skyline later." She sat back, head tilting the reflex to win, still searching for a foothold. "You're trying to humiliate me," she said. I kept my voice mild. "No," I said. Orientation. I tapped the blank line near the signature page. It was titled, in plain type, "Why I'm Willing to Serve." "That one is yours," I added. "It isn't graded. It is a promise to yourself." She stared at the line as if it might write itself. I didn't fill the silence with history. I didn't explain the night shift years, or the bleachers, or the way a boy's fever breaks just after dawn when the right medicine finally takes hold. I kept to today. If the hours are too heavy, I said, I'll place the agreement with a retired teacher and her adult son. He uses a chair and needs the elevator. I said it the way you mark a calendar, not a threat, an option. The waitress slid a plate of toast between us I hadn't ordered. "On the house," she said. Darlie lifted her cup, then set it down untouched. Jasper said she began and stopped herself. "My boy is a man. Friction teaches better than a mother's speech." I let the city do the teaching. I let the paper trail speak. I pulled a sticky note from the folder, circled the number 48, and set it on top of the summary page. "You have 48 hours," I said. "If you sign, you begin service this Saturday. Safe Harbor's coordinator is named Bernice. She is direct. If you don't sign, there's no scene, no story, just a change of occupancy. Either way, the building will be in responsible hands." Bernice answers Saturdays but prefers email subject. Service start. She stared out the window at the traffic sliding toward the lake. Behind her, a child in a booster seat pounded a spoon. His mother caught it and kissed his hair. I laid cash for the bill under my mug and closed the folder, so the yellow highlights gleamed like rails already laid. "You can choose your work, darling," I said as I stood. "You can't choose what work makes of you." I didn't wait for a rebuttal. I didn't look for a flinch. I stepped toward the door, the bell chimed, and a cool ribbon of air lifted the folder's edge. Outside, a bus exhaled. I walked east, the envelope in my tote, and the deadline on her side of the table where it belonged. The lobby at noon had its own Tide residents drifting in with gym bags, a courier sliding envelopes across brass, the concierge working the phone with a nod that said she'd already seen the day. I set my tote on the marble, signed for the bulletin case key, and pinned a single page under the craft header that read, "Notices." Effective immediately, all decorator and vendor appointments for PH 57 are canceled, pending written owner authorization. A. Stone owner. I added the date, the time, and my unit, the kind of details buildings respect. The glass door of the case shut with a clean magnetic click, and the concierge logged the notice number while I returned the key and stepped back to let the lobby breathe around it. From a chair by the window, I opened the building portal and authorized the bulletin that would travel faster than paper. Subject: PH 57 Access Update Owner. Authorization required. Recipients: the planner's list, security loading dock, concierge management. I attached a one-page policy PDF. The language was plain and bloodless, dates, entry points, a single contact line. In the BCC field, I added counsel to keep the trail intact. I read each sentence in my head and deleted every adjective. Send. A small banner slid away. In the sent folder, I set a rule to auto-archive replies to a label named PH 57 Access. Rules, not speeches. Records, not rows. At the desk, the concierge's screen blinked with the same memo. She looked up and gave me a professional nod. My inbox pinged almost immediately. Recall PH 57. Access update from the planner, as if an email could be whistled back once it cleared the gate. A second ping, stacked on the first recall, failed. I starred the thread and checked the headers. Within minutes, 4 red receipts landed in a neat column florist lighting staging photo wall, each with a green check and a timestamp. I exported the headers to a PDF and dropped it in the same folder. The habit is old with me, put a receipt where sunlight can find it. The building was speaking. There was no need to echo it. Down at the loading bay, the docklight laid a bright stripe across concrete. A florist cart rolled up hydrangeas swelling like small clouds, eucalyptus cooling the air. Security checked the tablet and shook his head with the kind professionalism that keeps a day from breaking. "Owner authorization required," he said. The crew lead sleeve tattoo disappearing under a t-shirt braked the cart and rubbed his forehead the way men do when they're doing the math of time. I stepped forward only enough to be useful. "Reschedule once I send the new scope," I said. "Will include a delivery window that doesn't waste your afternoon." He nodded, grateful for plain talk, and we swapped cards. No one raised a voice. No one rolled eyes. A single crushed stem on the floor left a green comma where the cart had paused, and then the bay swallowed the echo of their wheels. Back in the elevator, a woman from 56B balanced a grocery tote and a bag of library books, oranges, bright as traffic cones, against the canvas. She studied the notice in my hand and then my face in the mirror. "We've seen harder transitions in this building," she said, a smile softening the words. "You're handling yours with grace." I answered the way paperwork answers, brief, factual, trying to handle it with records. She laughed under her breath as the doors opened on her floor, the kind of laugh adults share when they recognize labor that doesn't show. The elevator kept rising. The mirror returned me to myself. The phone vibrated in my palm while I was writing a note to myself about glove sizes for the courtyard cleanup. "Can we talk? Please?" No greeting. No apology. Just an attempt to start in the middle. I typed one line and sent it before the softness in me could edit it into something motherly. Email only. Fax. not feelings for now. Then I turned the phone face down on the side table and sat with my hands flat, feeling the old impulse to fix everything, move through and out like a weather front. I would not argue in hallways. I would not rehearse history where echoes still remembered our names. At the desk, Ms. Klein printed a fresh sheet and slid it across the counter with a neutral pen. Community Stewardship Day. The header read the building's font steady as a metronome. Saturday, June 7th. Courtyard cleanup and book swap. Under host my name. We discussed trash bags and a volunteer list. She would arrange gloves, I would bring lemonade and tape for the signs. She mentioned with the same even tone a meeting request from the bride's father for tomorrow at 3. I accepted through the calendar invite without a note. Appointments would happen on paper first in rooms with doors that close. I left the pushpins where they were and let the paper do the talking. Outside, the river threw light onto the glass like a habit, and a cyclist rang a bell that meant nothing and everything. I'm here, I'm passing. Hold your line. The door swished shut behind me. Somewhere above, an inbox collected the proof that a day had changed shape without a single raised voice. I walked north for a sandwich and a roll of stamps. People would bring opinions. Paper would bring order. By evening, the flowers would be back in their buckets and the bay would smell like eucalyptus and dust. I noted the notice number in my notebook capped my pen. The concierge unlocked the owner's lounge and held the glass door. Mr. Whitlow came in a navy suit that knew how to keep its shape. His tie sat a fraction off center. I gestured to the window table. The river threw light across the pane, and two waters waited like an agenda already set. I kept my clutch closed and a yellow pad open with the pen uncapped, ready to listen, ready to write, ready to decide. He began with Harold. People often do. Formidable, he said, polishing a cufflink that did not need shining, principled. Then came the part that is never in a toast. Years ago, when Whitlow Capital was still fresh letterhead, he pitched my husband on a fund that would own the next decade. Harold listened, asked 3 questions, and declined. Invest in things that last, Harold told him. Homes, libraries, people. The fund folded within a year. He never told Darley. He had not wanted to retire his place at the head of the table. He let the room settle. I'm not asking you to undo everything he said. Just build a bridge. Release the decorator appointments. Restore elevator access while they adjust. Keep the penthouse in the family. He offered reciprocity introductions, donor tables, a public story that paints me magnanimous. His planner lay open to a month of empty squares pushed forward as if days could be collateral. No cash, no access, no optics in exchange for silence, I said. One sentence cleared the table. He sat back, rearranged a posture that had counted on agreement, and looked at me as if I had moved a landmark. I slid 1 page across the wood, the same ground I had offered his daughter, now distilled to an addendum. I would consider 90 days of provisional access only if the service clause began immediately. 15 verified hours each week at Safe Harbor Stewardship Day. Mandatory no brand content, filmed in PH 57 during the period, an automatic revocation after 2 consecutive misses. No appeals, I said. Rules should not teach people to cry on schedule. He read jaw easing and then tightening. You're making her work for the roof over her head, he said. I'm inviting her to earn the ground under her feet, I answered. People who stand on earned ground walk differently. Harold believed that. So do I. He looked past me to the river where a barge moved like a paragraph without adjectives. I let the quiet stand. Then I turned the pad to a fresh sheet. You walked by the corkboard, I said. You saw the Stewardship Day notice with my name. You kept a failure from your daughter to protect your standing. She learned entitlement to protect an image. My terms ask you both for what fixes neither pride nor optics showing up where no one is filming. I offered a pen and the volunteer line on the sign-up I had printed for myself. No cameras, no plaque, I said. Just bags to fill and a book table to sort. He swallowed. The tie stayed still. All right, he said, surprising himself. He wrote his name with a careful hand as if the letters might be seen by more than a courtyard and a trash bag. For a moment, he watched the ink as if it could rearrange his house. He closed his planner and tried the soft future. If Harold had said yes to me back then, he stopped. The sentence ran out of sidewalk. We stood. We shook hands like colleagues who had survived a difficult meeting and would keep their notes. If he had, I said, maybe your daughter would never learn to say yes to someone who needs it. The concierge opened the door with a small nod that meant the hour was done. He thanked me without flourish and stepped into the corridor where the river light folded across the tile. I capped my pen, slid the addendum back into the folder, and let my hand rest on the cover until the pulse in my wrist remembered itself. My phone buzzed. A message from my son, dinner tonight. 2 words and a period that wanted to be a bridge. I typed back 7. No arguments. The screen dimmed. I gathered my things, walked past the corkboard where my name sat under host, and felt the ordinary weight of a plan. In the lobby, the concierge nodded toward the door as if to bless a small parade. Outside, the afternoon had shifted the river from steel to coin. I stepped into it without hurry. Men like Mr. Whitlow think bridges are made of introductions and favors. They forget some crossings happen on foot one Saturday at a time with a rake in your hands. I have built those. I can build more. By the revolving door, I texted Safe Harbor, expect a new volunteer. Send orientation times. I put the phone away without waiting. Some answers are earned in sweat and logistics. Some apologies, too. Near the curb, a rideshare idled and then moved on. The world does what it does. I prefer to do what I said. At home, I set the folder on the entry table and smoothed the edges flat. The addendum waited inside like a held breath. The Stewardship Day list lay beneath it. I wrote 2 more names I meant to invite neighbors who once brought casseroles and never asked for their pan back. Then I closed the cover, set the pen atop it, and looked at the clock. 2 hours until 7. Enough time to boil potatoes, slice apples for a salad, and choose a bottle that would not make a speech. I set the table for 2 and opened the windows slowly. When my son arrives, I will set the plates down and keep the room as simple as my terms work. Truth and a seat at the table if you can hold it without breaking it. A knock came at 7. Miles stood with a cold bottle of apple cider and the look of a man practicing calm. I stepped aside and pointed to the kitchen. The table was set for 2 white plates, lemon water, the quilted placemats he grew up with. I carved roast chicken, set rosemary potatoes in a warm bowl, and shut the radio off. No television, no phones. We sat at the small table that once held school projects and overdue bills breathing together before we spoke. Steam curled from meat. Time rode air. I set the cider aside and placed 2 glasses. We let first beat belong to plates, not words. He asked about the curtains and whether I ever fixed the sticky window. I said I oiled the frame in March. He told a careful story about a patient who brought cupcakes to the clinic. I smiled at the right place and let it pass. Our forks clicked and paused, clicked again. The room listened harder than we did. Traffic brushed the block. The porch light stuttered on in the last of the dusk. He reached for the cider, then stopped reading me. I shook my head. We were not here to soften anything with sweetness. We were here to say what the wedding did not allow. I set my fork down. No arguments, I said. Remember. He nodded once and looked at me. Really looked, and the space between us did not rescue either of us. The folded napkins kept their corners. The clock hummed. We let quiet sit. He broke the stillness first. Do you hate me, Mom? The question landed without a rattle, just wait. I answered plainly. No, I'm not mad at you. I'm mad for me. His shoulders dropped a notch. The center of this room was not his feelings. I told him the ballroom is inventory precise spare. The QR code that routed me to the vendor line. The sticker that read, Afterthought warm from the printer. The program with a blank where a mother should be. Table 19 by the swinging doors, and the wobble I fixed with a folded program. The shot list that skipped groom plus mother, as if erasure were a typo to leave uncorrected. I used short lines, the tone you use to list ingredients before you bake. I said how he laughed at the front while the room arranged itself around a story that I was a useful absence. I said how silence began as respect and then stiffened into the only seat I was offered. He didn't interrupt. He kept his hands flat, palm lines open like roads no one had taken in years. I stopped before we wandered into reasons. No adjectives, no villains, just choices, mine, theirs. The buildings set down where we could see them. I did not ask for apology or a scene. I asked him to listen long enough for the facts to feel like facts. The candle held steady. Air moved through screen-carrying rosemary. He glanced at doorway-nicked pencil marks we measured. Him looked back at me. Love without respect isn't love. It's entitlement, I said, and the words did not need theater to land. You wanted me quiet so your future would look tidy. You wanted the view. He blinked. I added softer, but not smaller. I built the elevator shaft. His mouth tightened, then loosened. I did not stack grievances. I named design. I taught you that silence was kindness. It wasn't. It was erasure. I taught you that if I didn't make a scene, the people who needed to grow up would grow on their own. They didn't. They learned I would carry both the load and the blame for the dents. I took a sip of water. This isn't punishment. It's orientation. He looked at the plate like it might answer. So what do you want me to do? He asked. Choose respect when it costs you image, I said. Choose truth when it interrupts a party. Choose work that won't fit in a post. I let the sentence breathe. Start by seeing what I did not, what a room pretended I didn't do. I won't argue feelings. I will steward doors. If she wants the roof, sweep a floor. Service opens. Performance keeps it shut. Now. He let the words settle. You raised me better than this, he said at last. He didn't defend Darley. He didn't build a speech around his intentions. He looked past me to the window box and then back. What do you want from me right now? He asked. I answered, not speeches, decisions. He nodded once like a man hearing a diagnosis he can live with if he follows directions. I'll watch what she does, not what she posts, he said. I won't fix optics. I'll do ordinary work where it's needed. He stood to carry the plates, then caught himself and asked if I minded. I let him go to the sink. Water ran. The faucet hissed. He dried his hands on a towel he remembered from middle school, the one with the faint strawberry print. He sat again and did not reach for apology, like loose change. He sat in the quiet he had helped make and did not try to buy himself out of it. It fit him. So did quiet. I cleared my throat and kept the shape of the night simple. Email for logistics, I said. Fax only. He agreed. If she chooses the shelter work, that's her bridge. If not, that's her choice. He rose, stacked the plates, and carried them to the sink. I let him. He rinsed, set them to dry, and wiped the table like a man learning the weight of ordinary things. At the door, he paused with the bottle of cider. Take it, I said. He held it awkwardly, then smiled a little. I'm proud of you, he said. I answered, I still am of you. He opened the door to the soft hall light. We stood for a second, like people done with arguing, not done with love. Then he left, and the room exhaled with me. Morning made the bay window kind the light, brushing my desk like a careful hand. I set 2 stacks before me on the left, the brittle trust Harold and I signed when grief was new and hope was loud. On the right, a clean block of bond paper pulled from its wrapper. My pen lay straight against a brass ruler. I cracked the window an inch and let the city's hush fold in tires over damp pavement, a gull answering itself. On a yellow square, I wrote, What matters now, legacy means who it lifts. The kettle clicked off. I did not pour the tea yet. I opened the old binder and read what we once believed would be enough. Unencumbered gifts. Family harmony presumed. No restrictions interfering with the enjoyment of assets. The language was polite and blind. I penciled the margins as if I were back in a classroom correcting my own essay, No Accountability. Silences codified. A fairy tale handoff nobody earns. I circled PH 57, our tired shorthand for the penthouse, and the neat line that once assumed a ribbon, a toast, and a key. Harold's signature looked steady as ever. Love had been steady too. Our paperwork had not kept pace with what life taught after. On the right, I titled the new document with the same care I used to label a school supply box. The Stone Family Stewardship Trust amended and restated. The preamble said what I had learned the hard way. Assets exist to stabilize and dignify lives, not decorate them. Then the bones, nothing flowery rails instead of wishes. Pillar 1 community care and endowment to Safe Harbor to fund beds, legal help and after-school tutoring dispersed quarterly with simple public reports. Pillar 2. Earned family provisions releases tied to service and participation audited once a year by a boring, trustworthy firm. Pillar 3 reversion. If the rails are ignored, assets flow back to the foundation without drama with a letter no longer than a page. Some gifts, though, do not need gates. I turned a page and wrote a line I had been saving like a breath to Arlene, friend and volunteer at Safe Harbor. $250,000 unrestricted. No reporting, no hoop to jump through. Trust given as trust received. I initialed the margin and let the ink dry. I saw her hands packing welcome kits last winter the gentle way she asked women for their size, and then found something that fit dignity first. Harold would have liked her. I let that thought be a warm stone in my pocket while I kept writing. For my own, I drew the maps in plain ink. For Miles, 20% of the estate to be released when he completes 200 verified hours of service within 24 months at any registered community organization, not managed by his in-laws. Proof will be a simple affidavit and a supervisor's number. If he misses the window, nothing vanishes. The bequest defers until the hours are done with a scaled release that follows his feet. For Darley, PH 57 is not a stage. It is a school. Occupancy may convert to ownership only after 3 consecutive years of meeting 3 conditions, a minimum of 2 days a week serving at Safe Harbor, an annual report of a community initiative she initiates or supports, and attendance at our building stewardship day each quarter. 2 consecutive quarters of non-compliance trigger automatic reversion to the trust. No filming or branding inside PH 57 during the provisional period unless it is a private family gathering with no sponsors. This is not a trap. It is a bridge that requires feet. I checked the clock 9:45 and called counsel. We read every clause aloud as if sound itself could find cracks. She liked the rails. She tightened a comma, replaced a may with a shall, and asked if I wanted the Arlene bequest to index to inflation. I told her no. Gifts can be exact. She dispatched a mobile notary. 10 minutes later, a woman in a blue cardigan stood at my door with a leather case and a quiet stamp. We exchanged licenses. The seal pressed the page with a satisfying thud you feel in your wrist. I initialed each corner, signed my name without flourish, and watched her scan and send the PDFs back to counsel. When the printer cooled, I slid 1 clean set into a gray envelope and wound its string twice. Another set went into the fireproof box with the passports and the taped-up school photos that still smell faintly of glue. I set the envelope beside the brass key I had taken back from the concierge. The window breathed a longer breath. The curtain brushed the sill and sighed. I closed my eyes and said the line I wish someone had handed me when I was 25 and saying yes to everything because I was afraid to say no. Power isn't what you keep. It's what you set in motion. Outside, a truck downshifted at the corner. A sparrow threw itself at the morning and did not apologize for the noise it made. I left the packet by the key and opened the window a second inch so the new paper could take the room's scent. Somewhere a printer in an office across town was spitting out the same pages for a clerk to scan and shelve ordinary and monumental in the same folder. I cleaned the red pencil shavings into my palm, emptied them into the trash, washed the dust from my fingers, and let the kettle earn its purpose. The tea was strong and plain. The room felt steady. The work was done, and it would hold. I set the cup down, let the open window hold the promise with me and still clear. The courier was gone when I opened the door. On the mat lay a thin envelope and tucked beneath it a small badge cut by hand, Aileen Stone Mother. No logo, no roll, just my name spelled right. The cardstock curled slightly as if it had taken a breath before I did. I lifted it with 2 fingers light enough not to bend heavy enough to land. The porch light was off, though the day was bright. The brass key on the entry table caught a stripe of sun and held it. I slid the envelope onto the table and turned the badge over. The ink bled where the loop of the M kissed the paper. The hand was careful. Someone had decided I was a mother and not a role to be routed. I stood there, felt steady, so I didn't text Miles. I didn't call Darlie. I set the new tag in a shallow dish beside the one from the wedding that read, Afterthought, and let them sit there like 2 pages that now lived in the same book. I poured water, stood at the wall calendar, and circled a line in pencil. Safe Harbor Volunteer Shift, Thu 9 UIC's AM. I looked at the dish again. I wasn't promising forgiveness. I was promising standards. I set the envelope next to the brass key and returned to the calendar, drawing a second circle so I wouldn't miss it. The dish looked like a courtroom evidence judgment paused. I breathed and decided voice would be policy and presence, not complaint. Standards travel when they walk. 3 knuckles touched the wood, not urgent, not shy, present. When I opened, wind had lifted a loose strand of Darlie's hair. She wore no camera-ready shell, only the face a morning gives you. Her eyes flicked past me to the dish on my table where both name tags waited. I start at 9, she said, voice thin, hands empty. I'll be early. She didn't step in. This wasn't a visit, it was a line. Thank you for not posting. I said, show up, that's the post. She nodded a small square nod and went back to the elevator with her own feet. I stayed in the doorway so the choice remained hers. The hallway ticked with an elevator bell and the soft shuffle of a neighbor's mail. She did not reach for the envelope or the dish. She looked once, then kept her hands still. No speeches, I said. No optics, she answered a breath of a laugh at herself. We stood in a square of afternoon and let the air move. I didn't invite a hug. She didn't ask for one. Adults finally at a threshold built for adults. Tomorrow I'll take a job they hand me, she said. Good, I said. Let the work name you. I packed the quiet tools, sunscreen, socks, notebooks, pencils, travel-size lotion. Zip bags lined a canvas tote like steady bricks. I added a small stack of blank name tags and a fine-tip pen. Not for me, for anyone ready to print themselves again. I set the tote by the door and slept without rehearsing speeches. Work would be the only speech. I set out a plain blouse and walking shoes, placed a granola bar in the tote, and checked the bus line. I wrote the center's phone number on a card and slid it beside the name tags. No speeches, I reminded myself. No scenes. Hands, eyes, listening. Work Safe Harbor smelled of soap and coffee when I arrived at 8:45. Carol signed me in with a wink. Arlene was already sorting donations into rhythms only she could hear. At 8:55, Darlie came through the glass early carrying a box marked toiletries. No sunglasses, no angles. She asked where to help. Carol pointed to a table. Put hands where your heart is. There was a beat, and then Darlie moved. We stocked kits, side by side. A toddler lost a shoe. She knelt and tied it without commentary. A boy asked for a spiral notebook. She remembered his name when she brought one back. At 9:40, a staffer needed the mop bucket refilled. She rolled it to the sink, watched the water rise, and brought it back without making the task into a moment. At 10, a mom asked about diaper sizes. Darlie disappeared into the back and returned with the right pack and a quiet nod. She wasn't transformed. She was present. The hall lights hummed, tape guns snapped. No one filmed the sound of work. New families filtered through the door in 2s and 3s shoulders, tight at first, loosening when they heard their names used kindly. Darlie asked quiet questions. Sizes count storage. She waited for instruction, then repeated it well. When a cart jammed a doorway, she backed it out, laughed once at herself, and tried again. The work made her smaller, and in that smallness she fit. Good. Carol set a stack of blank name tags on the table between us. I wrote mine small and neat, then slid the pen toward Darlie and kept my eyes on the kits. She printed Darlie Volunteer the letters careful, then lifted a second tag, folded it once, wrote inside and tucked it into her pocket. Arlene glanced up and smiled like a teacher who had just seen a first correct answer, given without being told. The room was mismatched and bright. Names made it orderly. She pressed the fresh tag to her shirt like a stitch, smoothed the edge, then looked around to see who might need one. A woman at the doorway hesitated. Darlie offered a blank square. The woman wrote slowly and smiled at her own name. I left at 10:15 the tote lighter. By the door, a flyer read, Community Evening Monday. I took one and stepped into the bright quiet. I texted Miles 2 words she showed. He replied, I noticed. Back home, I slid the flyer under the brass key and kept the room calm. The air held. I let it. The room at Safe Harbor was mismatched and bright, and every chair had a name tag cut by hand. I arrived early because quiet helps me think. Paper banners sagged from twine, like friendly laundry, and crockpots breathed a patient steam from a folding table. Carol taped arrows on the floor for new families. Loretta checked a clipboard, lips moving as she counted. Children sprawled on a rug with crayons drawing houses with big windows and fat suns. I stood by the name tag table, smoothed a stack of blanks, and felt my heartbeat settle steadier than any ballroom had ever given me. Darlie met me at the door with a card she had cut herself. In neat, soft ink, it read, Aileen Stone Mother. She did not ask for my approval. She offered it like a chair that was always there. She led me to a seat that was central, not high-cushioned, with a thrift store pillow square in the long table where serving spoons would land. She didn't make a speech. She touched the card to the table and said, This seat was always yours. Loretta tapped the mic once, voice low and clear. We begin by thanking the woman who built bridges the rest of us now cross. The claps were gentle, not thunder, which is better. Gentle lasts. Darlie read 2 lines into the mic. We remember names here. We keep promises here. She handed the mic to Arlene, who told a 30-second story about a volunteer who kept showing up before she was ready to talk. No names, just respect. A toddler squealed from the coloring rug. Someone laughed. The room settled the way a good quilt does, by weight and warmth, not by edges. I kept my hands on my lap and let the words do their work. It felt like a window opening without anyone needing to say why. At the edge of my place setting, I set 2 rectangles of cardstock side by side. On the left, the sticker I had not worn, the one that said, Afterthought in black, sans serif. On the right, the new card that said, Mother. I did not raise them or point. I let the room choose whether to notice. Carol caught my eye and nodded once, as a librarian might when a book is finally returned to the right shelf. At 6:05, the door clicked. Miles came in wearing work shoes, a volunteer tag crooked on his shirt. He did not look around for approval. He went straight to the stack of folding tables and carried one to the back without asking. He knelt to tape a frayed rug edge so no one would trip. When a teen asked about a resume template, he said he'd help after dinner service. Later, he brought me a cup of water. I registered 200 hours St. Leonard's. And here, he said quietly, I start Wednesday. No apology tour. Just a plan. Send me the schedule, I said, so I know when to pray for your knees. His mouth twitched into the smallest smile, the kind that remembers heavier years. The room breathed together. Cocoa lids clicked. Coats found shoulders as the air cooled. An elder began humming, Abide with me, thin and sure. Arlene tied a scarf around a little girl's neck and whispered something that made the child squeal. Darlie wiped a table without flinching at a sticky ring of juice. I refilled the name tag blanks. A shy mother printed her name in bold letters and pressed the tag flat against her sweater, like a small flag finally raised. the bulletin board filled with tomorrow's needs, pinned over last week's hopes. In the hallway where the soda machine hummed and the exit sign made a red halo on the floor, Miles and I stood with paper cups. "Mom," he said, "I can't undo, but I can do." "Then do," I answered, "until your hands remember more than your mouth does." He nodded, eyes unguarded, the way they were when he was 5, and scraped his knee and let me wash the grit without flinching. We didn't fix everything. We didn't break anything further. Sometimes that is a kind of progress the world never claps for. Loretta closed the evening with thanks, as chairs scraped and crockpots went quiet. Families slipped into the mild night carrying foil-covered plates and paper stars. Darlie gathered crumpled flyers and slid one into my palm, tomorrow's board review printed in black. I tucked it into my bag under the brass key and felt the weight sit where it belonged. Outside, the street smelled faintly of rain and bread, while Carol clicked off the lights, one switch at a time, leaving the banner letters to glow in the memory they had earned. Doors swung on quiet hinges, lemon polish lifted from the long table as if the wood held its breath. I entered with Ava, my council shoulders straight, folder flat. The pitcher sweated on a coaster. The wall clock clicked a metronome for grown people. Leonard sat already portfolio swollen. Miles stood behind my chair, hands open. Darlie waited by the back wall with a yellow legal pad. The clerk cleared his throat and read the line that mattered. Item 3, title clarification and governance review. We took our seats without scraping chairs. Ava touched the blue tabs once, then let them rest. The room smelled of polish and printer heat. A red LED glowed on a microphone, waiting for record. Ava slid the chain of title across the glass blue tabs, marching like small flags. The clerk stamped each page. The thud sounded final without drama. I set my brass key on the folder spine, not as theater, only as truth. No speech, no history lesson. What mattered now was who held what and why on paper that outlives noise. Ava murmured, "Exhibit numbers." The clerk read them into the mic. A director followed the tabs with 2 fingers and nodded once. Certainty arrives. Printed, signed, quiet. Ava read evenly, voice built for rooms like this. Unit PH57 Langston Tower vested in the Stone Family Trust. Controlling authority Aileen Stone. She added the escrow correspondence blind copied months before anyone ordered flowers. On the screen, the recording receipt glowed large instrument number, date, time. A director asked for any contrary filing. The silence that followed was clean and ordinary, a silence that means the records match themselves. I watched the cursor blink, then settle. My name, once shoved to a back table, sat where it belonged on the deed, on the minutes on the line that steers access. Ava let the page close by its own weight. The stamp's raised seal left a shallow circle you could feel with a fingertip. The clerk double-checked the monitor, the binder stamp. I did not speak then. The deed spoke, as did the notice logs and the scheduler entries that paused vendor access the night after the wedding. Nothing theatrical, just dates, signatures, and a seal. Leonard stood with a rustled chin set. He spoke of promissory intent of a pledge for a decorator he says I knew about. He lifted a letter that had come back, red-stamped, undeliverable. Ava answered without heat, no consideration, no board approval and trust control predating every promise. She slid forward the occupancy addendum Darlie signed service terms, clear, notarized, voluntary. A director asked, "Did you verify ownership before committing resources?" Leonard's cuff tug told the story before his mouth did. Ava pointed to our timeline notices to management payment. Rails paused corkboard postings, all dated within policy. A director asked if any party had been denied due process. The clerk answered, "No." The clock clicked. Pride has a sound when it sits down. Leonard looked at the red stamp again, as if it might fade if he watched long enough. I kept my eyes on the agenda printout and the thin ring the pitcher left on its coaster. The board waited. Waiting is also an answer. A motion arose to affirm title and current occupancy conditions. Hands lifted around the table, one after another, steady as lamplight. Unanimous, the chair said, and tapped the gavel once. The minutes caught the sentence that will outlast us all, owner of record Aileen Stone. I breathed through my nose, not my mouth, and felt relief arrive like a coat laid over cold shoulders, warm, weighty, private. Ava slid the signed sheet back into our folder and capped her pen. In halls like this, victory does not leap. It sits changes, who uses the elevator, and who signs for deliveries. That is enough. I introduced the Endowment Resolution Annual Funding for Safe Harbor Scholarship microgrants for residents moving toward stability and a conditional conveyance of PH57 unit. If Darley completed 3 consecutive years of verified service and a yearly community project title could pass, failure would return the unit to the foundation. I added one quiet line: every grant would be delivered with a blank name tag. People would write themselves back in. The board chair read resolution title and looked to others. Heads tipped, pens lifted. Motion: so moved. Second. All in favor, hands. Ava summarized the rail's quarterly reports to the clerk spring audits and a rotating committee with 2 resident voices. No filming inside PH57 during any provisional period. Exceptions limited to private family events. The chair called the vote. The ayes were not loud. They did not need to be. In the corridor, the lemon smell thinned to hallway air. Miles touched my shoulder. "I'll earn my hours." "Don't earn me," I said. "Earn you." Darley stepped close enough to be heard, not seen. "I'll meet the terms," she said, eyes steady. I nodded toward the volunteer tag pinned to her sweater. "Start with today." She breathed as if the sentence gave her a floor. We walked with our shadows side by side. The elevator chimed and closed. No one rushed us. Paper under my arm kept a straight line. That evening at Safe Harbor, I set 2 cards into a small oak frame behind the desk, Afterthought and Mother side by side, dated. Above them, a stack of blank tags waiting. I closed the glass, turned the key, and listened to the cabinet click. Mine will be readable. It will hold for those who need it. I learned this dignity is not silence. It is choosing when and how to speak, so the record, not rage, carries the truth. Money can build walls, but service builds doors. If you felt overlooked, name yourself and keep showing up. If you hold power, let it set others in motion. What would respect look like in your home this week? What bridge could you build? If this story touched you, drop a 1 or share where you're watching from. If it didn't, tell me why. I'm listening. And if you want more stories like this, please subscribe so we can keep walking together. Share one small act of service you'll try this week, or the name you wish was heard. Your voice helps families find steady ground. Go.